More than 4 billion people in the world use social media, whether you use Twitter, now called X, or Facebook, or YouTube, perhaps, which is where you're watching this discussion right now. Social media really has taken over our lives. How has it evolved over the last couple of decades, and where is it heading in the next few decades? Our next guest is here to discuss this. He has a very interesting story, and he's been involved with social media and technology startups for the last 20 years. He is Juan Bruce, co-founder and chief strategy officer of Discover. Previously, he built early Facebook Open Graph applications and was the co-founder and CEO of a leading social media publishing platform called Epoxy. Juan was also involved in the venture investing space and was a co-founder and managing partner of Robert Downey Jr.'s Downey Ventures Fund. I'm looking forward to talking all things social media and Web3 with Juan today. But first, a shout out to our sponsor, iTrust Capital, an IRA that offers 35 crypto assets and 1% trading fees, the lowest in the crypto IRA space. iTrust also offers unique tax advantages. So if you're over 18, want to open a new account with cash or roll over an existing account, click on itrust.capital/David down below to learn more and get started. Juan, welcome to the show. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here, David.
You've graduated from Stanford with an MBA, and you did engineering prior to that. What led you to working in the space that you are currently in now, which is Web3? Obviously, when you graduated from Stanford, Web3 wasn't a thing. So tell us about your professional history working in some of the major, biggest, most influential social media platforms in the world leading up till now.
Yeah. Well, David, not only did Web3 not exist, when I graduated, social media didn't even exist. Really, the path into it was a combination of early on working on media tech devices at an amazing design firm, IDEO. Worked on some of the early mobile devices and getting music flowing through them and getting music into cars. And then really after business school, that's when social media was getting started, and took a deep dive into it, working from the media side, first at a partnership with the William Morris agency called Brand Sense, where I started to understand how big content was made that would then start having a lot of impact in social media, and ended up working and building some of the early Facebook Open Graph applications, and ended up coming out of Robert Downey Jr.'s company. We spun out the company you mentioned, Epoxy, where we built tools for all of the big YouTube stars, online video creators, video networks that were publishing both across YouTube as well as social media like Facebook and Twitter. And
what kind of tools, Juan?
Yeah, so basically we realized that video was a form of social media, which I think people understand well today, but in the early days that wasn't obvious. And so we were building tools that would allow creators not just to understand their analytics of how their video was doing on platforms like Facebook and Twitter, but we were literally building applications within those platforms. In that era, Facebook had something called the Open Graph, which was incredibly powerful, which allowed anybody, whether it was a startup entrepreneur, a Hollywood studio, or a video or a creator, to build their own applications. And so we built these applications to make video work within platforms like Facebook and Twitter before Facebook and Twitter even had their own video applications. So, for way over a decade, I've been dealing with how media works on these big platforms and how the different parties involved, whether that's the user watching it, the creator building it, like yourself, or some of the big studios that are trying to look how to manage this on a network level, are using it. So we built those tools to help the creators and the networks have better impact and better, reach and relationships with their audiences. And so that's really what got me into social media. Then after selling that company, I'd seen the rise while working on that company of the crypto influencer. And crypto is fascinating because it's one of the first large industries built after social media existed and after social media marketing was state of the art. So naturally, crypto jumped in headfirst to social. And really, they were also not getting any kind of mass press coverage early on. So crypto was essentially born on social. And that led me to looking at social analytics and jumping back into kind of my venture capital side and getting together with a few friends that were founders and venture capitalists and building a fund that investing in crypto projects that used social media as an input to our investment thesis. We ended up running that fund from 2016 to 2019. And then we're merged into a group that was spun out of BCG Digital Ventures, building blockchain and fintech startups, as well as investing in them with big corporate partners. And it was there that my co-founders and I in Discover really started thinking again about this intersection of social media and Web3. My co-founder, Rick, is an amazing ex-Google engineer, worked on MySpace over a decade ago. And we kept talking about how, the dynamics and the amazing creativity and positivity that we knew around social media from over a decade ago was gone. And at the same time, Web3 was emerging and it was fully social, and there were so many interesting opportunities. And it just seemed like the perfect combination to rebuild social media with Web3 technology and fintech to enable a different relationship for all parties involved.
All right, I'm going to come back to Web3.
Sure.
So that's an interesting space, developing space. Currently, I'm looking at different surveys, but one survey in particular is reporting that as of 2022, more than 4.5 billion people around the world have been logged as using social media in some way or fashion. Over the course of your career, how would you say social media has evolved in its primary use case for its users?
Yeah. So it really has evolved. Social media has become a number of different things for people. It started out as just the individual social relationships between users.
Well, I should back up. Yeah. What would you define as the OG, the first real social media platform?
So, I mean, that's difficult. You could go back even before Facebook, but I think Facebook was really the first social platform that had impact at scale. And so when that started off, that was all about keeping up with your friends and social relationships, right? Now, social media has become a way that news propagates, a way that we deal with geopolitical issues. It's become a place where people build communities. It's become a place where businesses are run and commerce is done. So you basically take a large portion of the industries that existed on the internet or even pre-internet, they now all exist on social media. So one of the things that's really difficult is a lot of these social platforms have become so encumbered by this combination of different business models and different dynamics for users that are running on top of them, that it's really hard for them to change, right?
At a certain point, do you think social media will surpass traditional media in its reach in broadcasting news, or do you think there's always going to be a bifurcation of two completely different mediums?
No, I think it's combining, right? I think it'll get larger reach. Also, the definition of what social media is changing. So you're getting platforms like TikTok, where the individual social relationships are less important than the algorithmic delivery of content. And so, but a lot of people still refer to something like that as social media. So I think we're going to see these applications that keep expanding with slightly different takes on what social is, and in a way, just taking over the world. Now, news media, I think, and I hope, because I love the news as much as I'm a technologist, will continue to exist on owned and operated platforms. But as we're seeing, those are going to need social to help distribute and get the reach to their content.
As content creators, we're always in the back of our minds concerned about a platform either demonetizing completely or shutting down. Let's just take YouTube, for example, where this conversation is going to be posted. What are the chances that Google next month says, you know what, we're going to shut down YouTube, or something happens and everything is going to get demonetized? These are extreme black swan scenarios, but is there a path to to that scenario that you could see in the future?
Yeah, so I'm less worried about Google in particular because it's a model that's been pretty much baked into their economics for a long time, but it is more concerning on some of the other platforms. And we've seen these forms of demonetization happen. Even if it's not directly creators losing a partnership program like YouTube, it can be things like loss of APIs. And we've seen that be massive impacts on social related businesses over the last decade or so. We saw Facebook's Open Graph, which was an amazing area of creativity. It launched companies like Spotify and Zynga that build off the social graph, and many small startups. The Open Graph has been largely curtailed. We saw Twitter's Firehose, where a tremendous amount of companies were built around that, closed down. And most recently, we saw Reddit severely restrict its API to the disappointment of many of its users, many of whom were creators and dependent on it. So it's not only the partner programs that are directly visible, it's the subtle nuances of what's accessible in the API and what people like yourselves or networks can build on top of it.
And so what are creators doing to mitigate such risks?
Yeah, so I think they're looking a lot on what they can build on their own and what other services can cater to them and their own business models. And this is really actually feeding a lot of our growth. So, at Discover, almost all of our growth is organic, and that is projects in the crypto space, which are very similar to creators, as well as creators building communities on top of us. But I think it's not just with us. You're seeing people, exploring other platforms that go along with it, like Patreon for many years now, building owned and operated sites and trying to figure out building e-commerce or mini applications to go along with their practices.
Do you think that other industries will become challenged by the growth of social media? And I'm talking about things like telecoms. I'm talking about things like banks, for example, as we see apps move towards becoming the everything app following the WeChat model in China, for example. Why use, for example, why sign up for a data service if I can just use WhatsApp, which is plugged into the Wi-Fi, where I can use Instagram, which can call and text and share photos? Why use a bank if I can just at some point down the line, if Elon Musk is successful into integrating Twitter or X with some financial services, why use a bank? Why not just use X, right?
Absolutely. So, and in the 3 or 4 years prior to Discover, I was working with big banks and insurance companies, and I think there's a definite threat. And the reason there's a threat is that social media is more sticky than your dry banking app, right? If all your friends are on there, if you've built up a habit of going to it on a regular basis, you're less likely to leave that, where a banking app has no stickiness at all. You add on to that the fact that now there's the ability to embed fintech within social media, which is one of the things that we're really doing at Discover. And so you can take that place that people visit for their content, to catch up with their friends, to be entertained, and weave financial services right in with it in the same application. So I think, 10 years from now or so, we're not going to see the division. Now, the difficult part in doing this, and the challenge I think that companies like Twitter see, is how do you build an app with a simple enough interface that can serve all those different purposes and not be encumbered by too many features where they just get lost.
Well, what's your solution to that problem?
Well, the solution to it, I think, is, the next generation of social media, right? And it doesn't have the innovator's dilemma of having a ton of features that it has to support and old business models that it has to support. It can be built from the ground up with the fintech first for all parties, right? And it's like you mentioned with a WeChat app, one of those parties is the user being able to do their banking. But when you think about social media, it's not just the user. I tend to think about it like a triangle, really, where you have the user, the creator, and the partners or the brands. And really, the fintech needs to serve all of those parties. And so if you're building a new social media application today, you're building it with that fintech in mind. And that's much easier than taking a social media application that has existed for a decade or more and trying to retrofit that fintech into all the different corners and features of the application. Add on top of that the political issues, which, you know, Facebook saw several years ago when it tried to introduce its own crypto efforts, to introduce some of this cutting edge fintech. It starts to get really difficult. So, you know, I think there are different versions of this solution, but the clean sheet of paper in this case is a real advantage.
When you say you're integrating social media with Web3, practically
Yeah.
speaking, what does that mean? Just
Yeah.
educate us for a minute, please, Juan. What is Web3? How would you define Web3?
Yeah, so I would define Web3 as blockchain and crypto technology. And when we look at it, we look strongly at the financial elements. So in our case, there are things on the application like data being recorded to the chain and portability of data, which are kind of table stakes, but in reality, I think that doesn't matter to the majority of users. When I think about a Web3 social network, it's what kind of Web3 or crypto functionality can I do on there as a user that I can't do on a normal social network. So that's something like tipping in crypto, transacting in crypto. We have stories in our newsfeed where you can buy an NFT from a partner, Magic Eden, without ever leaving the feed and do the whole transaction. So that's something you can't do in a Web2.
Wait, so you're also a trading platform then?
So we're not a trading platform, but we are enabling with an API integration of other partners.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's a really critical thing. And this goes back to an amazing lesson, frankly, from Facebook. I mentioned Facebook's Open Graph from over a decade ago. Companies like Zynga and Spotify were able to find users, find their friends' users, and grow massively off of it. They weren't able ever to monetize. You couldn't transact on platform in that era. But today, because we built the platform with the fintech embedded and with the open API, a crypto project can kind of dream up whatever makes sense to live in the newsfeed and put it there, right? So our users are thus able to see a NFT shared by their friends because they think it's cool, and then click on a button in a story and transact straight with that project out of the newsfeed. So it's interesting in that we're providing the fintech rails, but we are not an exchange.
Why aren't traditional legacy social media companies actively engaging with cryptos in the same fashion? I know Facebook has tried to launch Libra. I know that Elon Musk has flirted with Doge a couple times, but we're not seeing heavy integration yet. Why not?
Yeah, I think there's a couple factors. One, we're still just down the adoption curve of crypto. It's still coming, right? And the other is that there's political issues with this, right? It's not a very popular time to be doing something with crypto in a lot of large corporate circles post FTX, which is a sad, unfortunate, centralized fraud case. But I think it's just a matter of time, and we will see it.
One of the concerns that users and creators alike have is the rise of AI deepfake. I think you know what I'm talking about. How do social media platforms safeguard against this going forward?
Yeah, so I think that's you often hear about it that blockchain technology and AI are kind of made for each other, and that's the reason that you have a way to basically track and validate content with blockchain. And so I think we're going to need more blockchain and Web3 verification of what is real content to try and suss out the deep fakes. In other words, you could put your stamp of approval as a creator and some form of creation or ownership by recording something on the blockchain. And then if you aren't doing that with these deep fakes, people could very quickly start to spot the deep fakes and the content that's not real. So
there would be some sort of digital signature alongside
absolutely.
every single piece of content I release?
Absolutely. So we're not showing right now digital signatures, but as an example on Discover, all of our content is written to chain. and it has a log of all the activity going on around it. So there's definitely a path when this starts becoming more and more of an issue to start recording and allowing people to audit these digital signatures to create a clearer path.
What is the future of social media in terms of the type of engagement that will most likely explode or gain the most growth? Is it short form videos like TikTok? Is it long form videos like we see on YouTube? Is it text like on Twitter? Is it messaging and relationship building with other people? Pictures like on Instagram? What is the medium that you think will see the most growth?
Yeah. So I think it's actually not about the specific form. I think you're going to see all of those. But what it is about is having an open platform where you can use the same social network to have all of those different forms coexist in different applications. And that's what we call an open API. And that's what will eventually become an open protocol. And so it's very similar to what you've seen go on in previous generations of social media, like the fact that Facebook has Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, because users want these different forms of communication for different parts of their life. But what they also want is the portability to take friends, relationships with brands, relationships with communities across these platforms as they choose. So what I really think is it's giving the power of the user to mix and match the format that they want to see with the people that they want to see with the brands they want to see in the communities.
Besides the up and coming Web3 platforms like Discover, which of the other legacy platforms do you think are seeing the most growth and are moving in the right direction according to your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty difficult question. Frankly, I'm seeing a lot of kind of stagnation and sideways movement. And as much as I would love to have a glowing review for one of them, and I still have friends that work in all of them, I think it's really a difficult time, right? I don't think there's a clear winner, and I think they're a little bit struggling under the weight of their current features and where they sit politically.
Is that just an issue of too much competition or not enough innovation in the space?
I think it's really innovator's dilemma, right? So when you look back at it, they have all built up around these advertising models because those were the only models of monetization 10 or 12 years ago, right? There weren't good models of monetization that allowed for different partners and different interfaces. And so now they have to answer to the, quarterly financials. And yet they're trying to transform from an ad first revenue model to a diversity of revenue and partnership models. And those transformations are just really hard.
Well, Twitter is certainly trying to make that transformation. Its valuations took a hit, $44 billion last year, and latest filings disclosed it's worth about $19 billion. Company's own valuations, might I add. What happened there?
Yeah, I think they're going through exactly the trough that we're saying, right? So if you look at a lot of the other social media companies, they're trying to incrementally transform these revenue models and these partnership models. Elon Musk, on the other hand, took a big swing, and he's not afraid to disrupt quickly. But what that means is when you disrupt those existing models, especially around the ad models, you go into a trough and you take a revenue hit. The question is, can you come out? Is he going to be able to come out the other side with a streamlined product that's a different mix of revenue models as well as partnership models, both for the creators and the brands? Are users going to want it?
And the metaverse, we hear about this.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it affecting companies' operations at all? Is it a strategy that most companies, social media platforms are trying to pursue?
So I think there was a little bit of jumping the gun with the metaverse. I think that was rather unfortunate for Facebook. I think it's something we'll probably see in the long term, but I don't think it's a place to put a lot of energy in the next 5 years. We still need the evolution of hardware, and it's only going to be one part of the mix, right? Storytelling is different in the metaverse. People's function is different in the metaverse. So I don't think we're going to see everybody transition into the metaverse as people thought maybe 3 years ago or so. I think it's going to be one tool for specific types of interaction and storytelling. Just like we have, specific experiences, like you might go to IMAX today or something like that. The other thing is, I think people are going to get to know metaverses outside of VR that was pushed, right? There are versions of metaverses which are, obviously more like playing a video game. And I think there are going to be versions of metaverses that are more like text and social media interaction.
Juan, where can we learn more about your work in Discover?
Thanks. You can check out Discover at dscvr.one, discover.one. And if you want to follow me, I am J Bruce, JBRUCE at Twitter. And you can also check out Discover One's Twitter profile if you want to use old social media to find out about new social media. We're at DSCVR1.
You've probably been asked this many times throughout your career, but what makes a piece of content go viral? Is there a particular formula or pattern that content creators have followed to make their content go viral?
Yeah, so I think the thing is, you have to find consistency in something that works for a smaller audience. It's similar to building a product in terms of finding product market fit. Then once you find that, you keep that consistency and you publish regularly. You experiment on different platforms to see if that same type of content is going to be working on those platforms. And then when you start to find some small signals, you build on it. The other thing I'd say is that collaboration is key. So you want to find other creators that are doing something similar to you and a similar or slightly higher audience size as you are, and do some collaboration and cross promotion with them. Because really, at the end of it, social media is about community, and it's about users picking up things that they like from other users, or algorithms figuring out that two similar users like something. So the more that you can do some collaboration with other creators, the more likely you're going to find those friends of friends, as well as you're going to trigger those algorithms.
All right. Well, thank you, Juan. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and follow Juan in the links down below.